This is my latest water-cooled build that I did in the V3000 Plus from Lian Li. If you guys missed that time lapse, you can find that video right up here. Today I'm gonna walk you through how I chose the parts for this custom build, how I did the tubing, as well as what are the plans for this PC build. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor.
This video is brought to you by bobkeys.com. You guys know the drill. You've just finished building your brand new PC, you boot it up, and bam, that hideous Activate Windows watermark appears. And the worst part is you forgot to budget $200 for an activation key from Microsoft because you spent it all on RGB. But that's okay, because you don't need to spend $200. You can pick one up from today's video sponsor, bobkeys.com, for a tenth of the price. The best part is you can use my code TT25 for 25% off, which takes this already cheap Windows 10 Pro key from around $22 to $16. If you're in the UK, that's £13. You place your order, your activation code gets added to your orders page, you whack it into the Windows activation screen, and boom, you're fully activated. No more watermarks being burned into your retinas. TT25 for 25% off, link in description.
So the first thing that I do with any case that I am custom water cooling is take a look at all the empty space inside of a case. I personally like to build my cases out to where the tubes are filling up every space possible in the case. I personally don't like seeing empty cases or empty space that's wasted. So that's why I did the spiral tube here, just to kind of fill up this vertical space that you see right here. Now, this case is massive. You can basically do anything you want with it. You can even fit 2 PCs at once. So this build was mostly focused for aesthetics. It wasn't really for performance, which is why I only went with one system inside this case. You can actually fit 2 of them inside of here, but the way that I have the GPU mounted, it made it kind of difficult to do that whole setup. But I'll leave some photos up on the screen so you can kind of see what kind of orientations you can do with this case. This setup was instantly my favorite. I think it's so unique having the GPU in the middle like this, as well as the sideways motherboard. I've always wanted to do a blue theme build, so I went ahead and ordered some of the parts from Premium Chill. If you haven't heard of them, definitely check them out. They basically make custom painted water cooling parts, and you can pick up whatever color you want. On the top of the case, I am using a 420mm radiator. Now, the bigger the radiator, the better the temps are going to be in your case. So this is definitely a beefy boy. Now, in the back of the case, we are using a 240mm radiator, and I wanted to get a little bit of a thicker one, but obviously it's kind of tiny, and that's all they had in stock, so we had to go with that one. For fittings, I had a bunch of these left over, so these are some right angle connectors in that blue color as well, and the rest of them are still currently in the case until we take them out. Now, there's a lot of fans in this case, I know, 15 in total actually, and yes, you really don't need that many fans, but it just looks so empty without them. We used a bunch of Lian Li's Uni fans, SL120 V2s. Now, the great thing about these fans is they are daisy chainable. So you can have 6 of them daisy chained to each other and have one cable coming off of them to hook up to the hub right here, which has 4 different ports on it. So it really helps with cable management in the back of your case. As far as the build goes, it's pretty standard really. Put everything on the motherboard, put the motherboard in the case, and the V3000 Plus comes with a removable tray, which makes it super easy and probably one of the best features on this case. Next up, I installed the distro plate. Now, if you're not familiar with what a distro plate is, it's basically an acrylic block that has in and outlet points that you can hook up your tubes to so that the liquid runs through it and then runs through the loop of your PC. Speaking of liquid, this is what we used. It's from EK, and it is called the Cryo Fuel Liquid. Now, this comes in all kinds of colors, but we decided to use the blue, obviously the match with the case. Now, you kind of have to make a decision here based on how much you care about aesthetics versus how much maintenance you're willing to do. Opaque fluids usually need flushing a lot more than, for example, clear coolant or distilled water. Now, again, this is more of a showpiece, so loop maintenance isn't really an issue here. Now, the loop itself is pretty simple. It comes out right here at the top of the distro plate first, and then it follows that tube all the way up here to the flow meter. Then it goes into the GPU here and out to the CPU and into my pretzel, I call it a half pretzel little loop, up into this back radiator. And then this pushes this up to the top radiator, and that goes down into the spiral and ends it back into the distro plate. It took me about 30 minutes in total to do this loop right there. Now, the first thing that I did is I grabbed my tubing and I grabbed a measuring tape and I put all the radiators into the PC PC first so that I could, one, map out where I wanted all of my tubes to go, and then I took measurements from the top of the radiator down to the bottom to see how much clearance that I had in order to bend my tubes. Now, a lot of people were still very interested in the technique that I used to create the spiral for my tubing. My father was actually the one that told me to make sure that I put that clip in the time lapse so that other people could learn and understand how you can create something like that. But this is how I did it. So I went to Lowe's and I got 2 of these clamps. I actually have 4 of them, but for this I only used 2. You can get them for like $10 to $20. So I had 2 of these clamps that I used to attach to my desk, and then I had this shower pole just randomly laying around the house that we never used, and I came up with the idea. I was like, I bet you I could use that to create the spiral. So all I did was I got the shower rod and I used the clamps to stick it to the desk so that it stays really sturdy, because you don't want it wobbling around when you're doing your tubing. Now, the tubing that I use is PETG tubing. I don't really like using acrylic much because it's a lot harder to work with, and I just feel like PETG is a lot more forgiving when it comes to creating the different shapes that you want to use. And this one in particular is from Thermaltake, and it's the 16 millimeter. You can get them in all different kinds of sizes. Just depends on your personal preference and the size of your fittings for your PC. Something else that I will mention, if you plan on doing a water cooling for the first time, please make sure to pick up multiple packs of tubing. When I first started my water-cooled builds, I probably got like 3 or 4 packs of these tubes just to practice, just to get a feel of what I could do with the tubes, because you'll go through these really fast if you're not familiar with what you're doing in your PC. And I will say, since I have been doing this for quite some time now, I was able to do the spiral in 1 session with 1 tube, and I didn't have to go back and redo it. So I was pretty proud of myself for that. Now, it is very important to evenly heat the tubing, which is why you can see me waving the heat gun around. And the reason for this is so you don't get lots of bubbles in your tube, because if you do that, you will not be able to use your tube. That piece of rubber you can see inside the tube is so that the tube keeps its shape when you're bending it. Otherwise, it would just collapse on itself. I was really happy with how the spiral turned out. I actually ended up having to bend another piece of the loop around it, so when I finally put it in the case, this is what it looked like. So for finishing touches, I decided to get a little creative, and I painted all of the vents blue to match with the fittings, the liquid cooling, as well as the radiators. Now, one thing that I really like about the V3000 Plus is the panels that come on this case, because they're very easy to remove. And also, the vents on the back have screws that you can easily take off to access the vents, so that if you wanted to do some custom painting like I did, you can easily do that. So you might be wondering, what do we plan on doing with this PC? Is it gonna go in my setup? Is it gonna go in Josh's setup? Actually, neither of us are going to be getting this PC. If you saw the time-lapse build, at the end of the PC build, there was a little credits that said that this build was dedicated to my father. So in fact, this PC is being shipped to my father tomorrow, and he is going to use it for his own personal build. When I told him that Liam Lee was sending us this case, he was like, oh my God, you're getting that case? He was like so excited for it. And I said, you know what, Dad? If you want this case, I will give it to you once we're done with it. So he's going to be building 2 PCs inside this case. He's gonna have a regular Windows one, and he's also gonna have one built for Linux. And he's also going to be water cooling his build as well. So I'll put some photos up of the stuff that he's going to be using, but that is what this PC is going to be doing after it leaves here. So that is it for the PC build. Hopefully I was able to answer some of your guys' questions. If I did miss out on anything, please leave a comment down below and I'll make sure to get back to you. And if you guys are interested in anything in this PC build, all the links will be down below in the description. If you enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to follow us on our socials, you can find Josh here and mine here. And until next time, guys, we will catch you in the next one.